Welcome to the Orca Boat Shop. My name's Rod. So today's project is going to be a simple little one. I'm actually going to try and build a wood mold to pour some lead into to make what we call lofting ducks or lofting weights. They're very expensive to buy online. Lead isn't all that expensive, so I'm going to see. Now I've kind of scoured the internet looking to see if anybody's got any ideas out there. There are some, and I'll give credit to that down in the description later. I'm going to try and simply build the mold to make 8 weights out of some nice clear 2x4 or maybe some 4x4 cut down. So let's get to it. First thing I need to do is to rip off a small bit off the edge of here to get rid of the rounded corners. I need that edge to be perfectly flat. These two pieces will need to come together in the middle. That one turned out okay. This one got a bit of a wow in the end there. I think I'll just see if I can shave it a tiny bit more off of there. We're going to have these two together with another piece of wood in the center, and the idea is that we can create sort of blocks like this on both of these. So with a block in the center, we just pour the lead into there. And what I've determined is if they're about 3 inches long and a couple of inches deep into there, they'll weigh approximately 3 or 4 pounds. So we're going to take that out, that out, that out, and that. I've measured about 2 1/4 inches deep. I'm just going to draw a line across here. The reason for that is I don't want square corners in here. I want to actually have these corners rounded over, so I'm going to take them over to the drill press and use a small Forstner bit to drill the corners out. It looks like a 1/4 inch Forstner bit is going to be about the right size. Just very carefully down to get into those corners. Now that I have all of the holes cut out, I'm just going to go with the bandsaw here and cut out the rest. That's one pretty much done. So I need to make another one of these. That's 4, and then I will have a 2x2 in here. I don't want to stand it that way, whatever. 2x2 and another one on this side, all glued down to a solid piece of plywood, and the lead will just get poured into there. First thing I'm going to do here is glue them to the center and clamp them. What I'll do is just rub these two together a bit. Glue on both surfaces and all surfaces. Well, that didn't work so well because these are a little bit warped. So we'll just have to do each one. You like my glue brush? It's completely reusable. Of course, then I want to wipe it in my pants. So they need to be tight in the center there. I can't have lead as I poured seeping in behind there. So we're really going to crank these down. One more. Get the big guns out. I'll let that glue dry, and I'm going to trim it up a bit, and I'm going to glue it down and screw it down to the base, which is just 3/4 ply. Time to attach the plywood base. I'm just marked across where the solid wood is across here. I need this to be attached pretty tightly. I don't want any lead leaking underneath. So I have a whole bunch of screws. I've already done the corners where I know there's solid wood. But now I can drive some screws here. Looks like 3 screws will do. Trim this up a little bit. My table saw here, make it look a little prettier. And we have our Lofting duck mold. The last thing I'm going to do is just kind of torch these, burn the wood without setting it on fire. Helps to seal the wood, any moisture coming out of there. We don't want that. Now that I have my mold ready, I just need to get some lead. So I searched the internet trying to find a local supplier of lead. It's actually not that easy to find unless you want to buy a lot of pounds of this stuff. In my search, I actually found a fellow not far from here who makes his own fishing weights, and he has molds for that. So I contacted him and I said, would he be willing to give this a try? He said, sure. So I'm going to head out there now with my mold, and we're going to do a pour using his lead and his smelter, I suppose you call it, small one, and I'm just going to buy the lead by the pound from him.
Now, the only thing we're going to have to watch here, there might be moisture in the wood.
Well, that's why it's been in the shop for a long time, and that's why I kind of torched it to try and dry the wood out, right?
Okay.
You know? Yeah, so that's what I read. You know, if there's water in there, we're going to have little explosions.
Not little ones, they're big ones.
Oh, no, we don't need that.
Now they don't want to come out. Oh yeah, see, that's busted. That's what I was expecting, just busted apart.
Why is that so tight though?
Ah, it's gone underneath a little
Ah,
bit.
that's what it is, it's inside.
Yeah. I'm back at the shop now, and I've got the pieces of lead poured out into the mold here. So we did have to break the mold to get one of the pieces out. So what happened in the process was we poured the first 8, and turning it over after they'd cooled a little bit and shrunk, They actually fell out of there quite nicely, but a couple of them broke a little bit, and he says that of course was because they hadn't let it cool down enough and they were still soft, so when they hit the cement on the ground, corners chipped off. A couple of them I think I can fix, it's not a problem, I'm just going to fill it with some thickened epoxy. But he said, well, we can just pour some more. So we poured 3 more into the same mold, but in the process of pouring the first ones, it burned a little bit of the wood underneath. So on the second pour, some of the lead was able to actually seep underneath the hard 2x4 structure between that and the plywood, and it were very hard to get out. So we just took off the bottom of it with all the screws off, and we were able to knock it out. So you can actually see on the second pour here, there's a lot more burn marks that on the bottom side. So I've ended up with 10 pieces of lead. Now it's just time to clean all these edges up. It's a soft metal. I'll be able to sand it down, which I will do outside with a mask on for sure. And then my goal is to kind of clean it up by adding a thickened layer of epoxy with some graphite in it, so they're all going to look nice and black. So being that lead is a pretty soft metal, I can just trim off the edges here rather than just sand it all down. I want to put a thickened epoxy base onto these, so what I have done is I've put a little piece of scrap strip, 1/4 inch thick in there. Then I have put the block in and put some clamps on. Now I'm filling it up with epoxy enough that this will just sit down in the epoxy and touching. So I just want to check to see that it is in fact touching, and it is not. So we need to put a little more epoxy into there. I think I've just got enough on this last one here that I can scrape out of the cup. I thickened the epoxy with a little bit of silica, then put a little dab of graphite in there to make it black. All of these ducts will be coated with epoxy and graphite, just to kind of make them look nice. I could just paint them, but I want to be able to use the epoxy to smooth them out. Now all of these little frames that I've made here just out of some scrap particle board, all got packing tape on there to make sure that it doesn't get stuck to the mold itself. My lead weights have been sitting in these molds for a couple of days because I've been busy doing other things, so they should be good and hard now. So now the idea is to see if we can release them with the epoxy base all molded on. So if everything goes well, they should just pop off of here and the mold should come out. So with a bit of cleanup, all I plan to do is kind of sand these edges down smooth, make this protruding piece of epoxy into a bit of a point so I can use that to hold, and then I'm going to be putting a wire into here that can hold battens down. So now it's just time to knock them all apart. Well, only one error. On one of these molds, I had packing tape on one side. I actually stapled it the other way. This one here, so packing tape's on this side, but this side was against the mold, so it actually kind of glued into there a little bit, and then just breaking it away, it's broken away the epoxy on the bottom here, but that's pretty fixable. I can put a little filler in there. Otherwise, they all came out very easily. I mean, they're a little bit messy here, but it won't take much to just hit them up with the sander and clean them up nice and square. To do before putting the brass pin sticking out the back is I'm just going to give them all a coat of sort of a rust paint, because I just think to like the look of the black better and to keep from touching the lead basically with your hands. I'm just cutting some 3/16 brass rod, which I'm going to bend and be put into the lofting ducts to hold the spline in place. So I will need 10 pieces, and I'm cutting them at 2 1/4 inches long, and I'm just using each one as a guide. Now I'm marking off 1 inch from the very tip, and then just with a hammer I'm just going to bend it over to 90 degrees. Then I just took my weights to the drill press and drill a hole slightly larger than the brass rod that's going to go in. Now when drilling into lead, apparently you can go very slowly and you can keep clearing the hole, clearing any shavings from the drill as it tends to bind and break bits. Last thing I need to do before gluing them in is just put a few sort of score marks on the shaft here, so that when the epoxy sits in there, it's going to really hold it in place. With the pins ready, the last thing to do is to epoxy them in. So all I'm going to do is I've mixed up some epoxy with a little bit of thickener in there. Not going to need very much. I don't really want it all being pushed out. Just going to gently push that into there. I thought it best if I actually rest these down on the flat so that the pins would be pushed down and touching the wood, and in some cases I'm actually even pushing them into the wood, and that way it'll hold them exactly where I want them to go. If I need to, I can just shave off a bit of the point if they're sitting up a bit too high and causing the weight to rock a little bit. I think I'm happy with that. Just let them harden up. Now that the epoxy is set on my brass little pin sticking out, I'm ready to use my lofting weights. So we call them lofting weights, lofting ducks, lofting whales. I think it depends on the shape you make them. I made mine just out of simple sort of square piece of lead. So the purpose of the lofting weight is to be able to take a spline that you're trying to draw a curve with. You can push, pull, use the weights to hold the spline in place, either by pushing on it from one side or pulling on it from the back side. And what we're trying to do is lay out patterns for the boat. Before making my weights, I did a bit of a search on the internet. I found actually very little information on making them. I don't think I found too many videos. I did find a few write-ups. The pattern that I followed and the write-up that I basically used was from the Duckworks magazine and Duckworks boat building. They have a little write-up on there. I did modify it a little bit here and there to suit my means. So do check it out. I'll credit them and a link in the description below. And as always, thank you very much to my subscribers. Do consider becoming a subscriber yourself by hitting the link, which is up in one of the corners down there somewhere, to follow along on all the things that are happening here in the Orca Boat Shop.